right now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I am currently in Los Angeles in a little room at the top of my house where my guinea pigs are.
Okay, so I have a lot of questions about the animals that live in your home.
Okay.
Because you have quite a menagerie.
Can you see the guinea pigs?
Oh,
Guys!
hi.
Guys! That's
Oh.
Gibbon. Yeah, so those are guinea pigs. They're not even supposed to be here. They're supposed to be, I don't even know why I have guinea pigs, really. It's a long story.
Because I was reading on your website that you have tons of tons of dogs and cats and stuff. So I was curious, like, how they came into your life.
My husband is also curious. Well, can you hear the noise that the guinea pigs are making? See, the thing is, until you've had a guinea pig experience, you can't understand. But the thing is that guinea pigs, one, they're about the size of like they're the sort of size and shape and conformation of like a piece of bread or some kind of like baked good. And so they're just appealing because they look like a sort of animal version of a bun. And then they make all these little noises that like, and like, they get very, very excited and they jump around. And I don't know, I have 3 teenage kids. So it's like, honestly, I come into the guinea pig room just to get a little bit of self-love,
Yes,
just have
for
somebody
some quiet time.
Yeah, and for someone to be excited to see me and to jump up and down and go, wee, rather than just rolling their eyes and being like, what? Which is what I get in every other room of the house.
Yeah, because so it must be a full house then with everybody.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, I feel like it sounds worse than it is, but we have chickens, which always makes it sound like there's a lot of animals because there's 6 of them, but they live outside. So it's not, we have, and it's not even that much because we lost a dog last year. So we have 2 dogs and 3 cats, a snake, a lizard, the 2 guinea pigs. That's it.
And the chickens.
And the chickens. So it's not really that bad. And it's not,
I feel like you're living my dream. Is there a pet that you have yet to bring home that you're dying to bring home?
It's a very, so many answers came to mind at once that I just completely froze up. I'm like, do I start with the farmyard animals or do I stick with the, and my problem is that I like them all. I just like animals in general. And so we had a possum here for a while that had been abandoned, not abandoned, but they often fall off at a certain point. They're a little bit too big and they balance them all on their back. Mother goals, but anyway. So this little guy had fallen off so we raised him. We only had him for like 3 or 4 weeks, but just to get him big enough that he could be released.
Released back.
That was fun. Although there's a whole side story about that. It turns out that possum babies really like Harry Potter because we had him set up in my daughter's closet, like you do, in a Tupperware, like a big Tupperware, right? And I was like, you can't get out of this. And it's got smooth sides. The thing's like, he's like this big, right?
He's so
like
tiny.
Little. And it turned out that he was getting out every night, but it was back in time in the morning. So we had no idea. So I don't know why he bothered to go to this level of subterfuge because I would have, I wasn't keeping track. Like I was checking up on him in the middle of the night. But he had come out of his Tupperware and then he had clearly over many nights built a nest inside a cardboard box inside a copy of Prisoner of Azkaban, which he had sort of chewed a hole in. So he was like in the book and then there was like his little food and seeds and stuff that he'd brought, I guess, for reading. And then
reading snacks.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, eventually we released him and we luckily had an extra copy of the book, so it didn't really matter, but it's, yeah.
Oh my goodness. I feel like you should have sent him home with his own copy of Prisoner of Azkaban on his adventure.
I love carrying it though, right? I mean, it's hard enough for a kid. For a possum, like a 70-gram possum, it would have been a toughie. But,
yeah. Well, so Abbi, thank you so much, like I've said, for entertaining my question about your animals. But let's take a step back and have you introduce yourself to us and tell us about how you started writing.
Well, it's a hard question to answer because I always worked as a writer. My mother is a writer and was a working writer when I was a kid. So that's what I thought parents did for a start, or mothers anyway. And my family were all writers, advertising writers mostly. And so when I finished college, I went and got a job working in an advertising agency as a writer, and then just kept doing that. And then I moved to New York and worked there for many, many years. And I always knew I wanted to write, but I always assumed that I would start writing books once I stopped working and started having kids, because again, that's what I had in my head. So yeah, so that's basically what I did. And I had my own agency for a while, and then when that closed down, I started having kids and writing books, which is why the first one took a really long time.
So yeah, what were you say the first one took a really long time. What was that journey like for you?
So that was, well, because you think you're going to be able to write while the baby sleeps, right? Which is this ridiculous concept. But I had 3 kids under 5, so there wasn't a lot of time. Mm-hmm. But I'm really lucky, and I had a husband. I still have him, in fact, or at least last time I looked. He's out in the other room, so he may have left. But as far as
he's out with the chickens.
He's still out there. Yeah. Who was basically willing to keep working so that I could stay home and take care of the little kids, plus pay for a little babysitting so that I could work, and so I was able to work for a few hours every day, and that, well, Monday to Friday while he was at work. And so that made a big difference. So the first one took 7 years, because it just took me that long to write it. And then I wrote it, and then I was lucky, I got an agent, but she wanted to make changes that I didn't want to make. This is to Garden of Small Beginnings. And she wanted to make it more sexy, because that was when 50 Shades of Grey was all the rage. And I was like, no, I'm not. It's
not your voice.
It's not my voice. It wasn't right. There's lots of people who write great sex scenes. That is not me. And also I feel like sometimes that's what you want, and you'll go to a writer who does that. And sometimes you won't want that, and you'll go somewhere else. And there's plenty of room for everybody, right? So I didn't want to make it that way. So she and I parted company, and then I didn't touch it for like a year in the middle. I just left it and tried to write screenplays and do other things. And then I came back to it and got a different agent, and the rest is history. But yeah, it took a really long time. And then the other ones since then have all taken 6 months to write, 9 months to write, because the kids are in school. And so it's a much more, although we homeschooled for a long time, but they were still always with teachers. They weren't with me. God, I would have killed them. But, it was a very bad idea, but
they would have just become your writing assistants at that point.
They live to just destroy my peace. So it's not, actually, that's so not true anymore. It used to be true. Now they just want to be left in peace. They just don't want me to have anything to do with them anymore. Yeah. They're 13, 16, and 18. So they're like, whatever.
They're just like over mom altogether.
So over me. They're so over it at the moment. Yeah. Especially after 6 months of pandemic. So.
Yeah. And is there any like movement for at least the 18-year-old to go back to school or anything?
Well, she was supposed to be gone now. I mean, she was supposed to move to go to college now, and she's put it off for a year.
Okay.
So, because she's going to Edinburgh University, so it's not just, she'd be going a long way away.
Very far, far away. That's beautiful.
Yeah, so I didn't feel completely comfortable having her do that in the middle of a pandemic, whereas normally I don't really care, but I didn't want her to get stuck over there, and not be able to get back, or
yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So instead, again, she's your writing assistant.
Instead, she's my writing assistant. She doesn't like that.
I was very curious, because on your bio, you did say that you had written for TV shows. Like, what did you find is the major difference between like your screenwriting experience versus like finding out that your voice really works with these beautifully cinematic books that you write?
Well, I mean, that's part of it, right? I think that the reason I like writing screenplays, which I do like writing, and I do like writing TV, not that I've ever had any success at it, but I like the form because I like writing dialogue, right? So the books, as you can tell, I mean, my weak point is description, and like, what my mother calls the foliage, right? Like the stuff that all the more descriptive stuff. Mm-hmm. I wish I was good at that, and I love it. And other writers, like, I really admire it as a skill. I'm not particularly good at it. I like dialogue, and I like writing dialogue and characters. So that's what I write. So screenplay is fun because that's all you're doing, really. But there's so much technical knowledge about how to structure it and how to build and all of that I wasn't really all that interested in doing. Whereas books, and also I'm the only asshole I have to work with if I write books.
Yeah, that's always like a big benefit when you're,
Huge
you know,
benefit.
a single writer.
Yeah, like I don't have to deal with anyone else. And I got pretty far with one TV show one time, and I found the whole experience of like having it nearly get made and having like this meeting and that so distracting, because it was so exciting that I was like, because you can't help but get, you know, like beguiled by all of this excitement. And you know, and there's a lot of hurry up and wait, you know, and I'm just not constitutionally capable of that. I just get too distracted and I can't keep focused, and I'm just it's better for everybody if I just focus on what I have in front
On
of
the
me.
novels for now.
Keep working on the novels for now, yeah.
So what was the what was the inspiration, the road trip inspiration for I was told it was going to get easier, sorry.
I had always wanted to write a mother-daughter book, and I had always wanted to write a alternating first person mother-daughter book. And so the road trip was basically, how can I keep them in one place for long enough to have a conversation, right? Because in my head, when I had this idea that I wanted to write this book, my children were younger. And so I always tend to write what's right in front of me, just because I don't know if I lack imagination or I just like what's going on. So I like to write about what I know and what I like. And what I discovered is that teenagers really, and I'm not the first to note this, but they are not easy to deal with at all. So you know, so
I've never heard that ever.
Yeah, they're great. And honestly, I do get a little annoyed sometimes that people are like, oh, teenagers, they suck, they're so hard. They're not. They're awesome, but they're just very much on their own thing, right? They just don't care so much about you anymore, and that's how it's supposed to be. So then I also sort of went, having gone through this experience of the beginning of teenagerness, where you suddenly realize that everything you know is useless, and that everything, you just feel like you just got your head around it, and then it just is completely useless. And so you're like, wait, I just spent, hang on, I'm sure this is one of my children. Here's one of my children. Hold on one second, would you please?
Sure,
Honey, I'm literally talking to readers right this minute. What's up?
About you.
It's okay, I'll call you back. She hung up. She's so sorry, she's 30. Now I've forgotten my train of thought. What the hell was I talking about?
Wanting to write a mother-daughter story and being at the different
yes, and
states.
So having had this in my idea, there's this fun mother-daughter story, when I actually get to it, I'm like, well, this is no fun, but then that makes it more interesting, you know, because then once I've trapped these two poor characters in this place, in one location, it just means, you know, they're stuck. So that's why it became a road trip, is that it was a way of trapping them in one place. Although it was a bummer, because then I realized I couldn't bring any of the other characters in, which, as you know, I love to do with the, you know, so yeah. So I did bring, Frances is her friend. I don't know if you've read that, but if you haven't read it, it's not a spoiler. But Frances from Other People's Houses shows up as a character.
Yeah, I think that's something that readers really, really, really love about your books too, is that you kind of keep the characters in the story. So your worlds are all interconnected in that way.
They are, yeah, because I like to do it. I like to read it. Like, I love that when other writers do it. And so I always wanted to do it myself. And world exclusive, first piece of information, the next book, which I literally just finished and which I submitted to the editor yesterday, and which therefore I can't promise will come out. It's supposed to come out in June. If she hates it,
who knows? Like, back to the drawing board.
Yeah, right. So, but if it is next year, Nina's in that one. So she's not the protagonist, but she's a main character. So it takes place at starts out at the bookstore again. Polly, Liz, they're all there, but it's about a new person that moves to the neighborhood. So
that's so
yeah, it's I can't decide. I realized the other day that the reason I like, and her love interest in the next one is Impossibly Handsome Bob from the first book, from Garden. Anyway, because it's like going to a party with people you already know, right? It's like going with a friend. So I already know these characters. I know what they'll say. I know what they'll do. And I'm pleased to see them, right? There's a sequence in the new book that I just wrote, I just finished, with Claire. I love writing Claire, the little girl from the first book, because she's just really a fun character to write, right? So yeah, it's I don't know if it's laziness or it's like just selfishness, but I just like the characters and I like to write them again. I'm always pleased to see them. So.
Do you ever have to like go back? Like, how do you remember stuff about the character so that you're able, you have to go back?
I have to go back. I had to reread. I mean, most broadly speaking, I remember, right? Because if you've been working on it for a year and also, and so you do remember a lot of it. But the trouble is, like with Garden, for example, I wrote that 4 or 5 years ago, and I've written other books since, and so I don't remember exactly what happens everywhere. So I have to go back and look. And Nina, once I decided Nina was going to be in this one, I had to go back and reread Nina, just to remind myself of what I had said already, you know, about her. Because believe me, you people notice when we make mistakes.
That was kind of my veiled version or reason for asking that question, is I know readers take it very personally.
They do, and I've made mistakes, and you know this because you're very familiar with the book world, right? But a lot of people see a book before it goes out. A lot of people, right? So you've got, just from the get-go, you've got me, you've got the editor, right? Now, both of us are going to read the book many, 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 many times. Then you've got an agent. Then you've got both of those people's assistants who also have to read the book, whether they like it or not, poor little buggers. And then you've got publicity people, marketing people, like probably 12 people at the publishing house will read the book by the end of it. And that's not even the copy editors and the proofreaders whose job it is to actually look for mistakes. So it's kind of amazing when a mistake does get through, but they do. There's a mistake in, I'm trying to remember which one. There's a couple of mistakes in Garden. There's a mistake in Other People's Houses. There's a mistake in Nina Hill that is so egregious that I literally called my friend who is an early reader of mine, and I'm like, I cannot believe that we missed this. And both of us were completely horrified that I'll tell you what it is. We left, there's a scene, I don't remember exactly what happened. It's the book club scene. And so Nina's talking to Lily and Annabelle, right, who's at the bookstore. Then they go home and Claire is at home, and a reader wrote to me and said, who's taking care of Claire?
Oh no.
And I'm like,
I don't know who's taking care of Claire.
There's no one taking care of Claire. Now, I mean, to be fair, I almost wrote back and said the dog, right? Because the dog's there. And she does have a babysitter that I refer to in the first book. So I could have said the babysitter, but instead I just pretended I'd never received the letter at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty much the response I would have had as well.
Yeah, I just sent it to the editor and I'm like, whoops. Yeah, so it happened. I mean, it happens more than you would like, but it does.
All right, well, so I have a couple of not a literal couple, but a few rapid fire questions for you to answer. Okay, so first is, what is your favorite trope to write?
I like a reveal. I don't know if that's is that a trope?
I think that counts. Yeah.
Like a reveal. I like a reveal or but not like a twist, because I'm not so good at the plotting. But I like a reveal. I'm trying to think of a good example of a reveal in my books now. Oh, well, Other People's Houses has a big reveal at the end, which I'm not going to say, but that's got a good reveal. But yeah, so I think that's something that I sometimes fall into. Like, you get excited about things sometimes as a writer and you really shouldn't, and it's really not a good idea. And so sometimes I think I get excited about reveals and it gets a little bit too cheesy, which I think is my problem is my tone of voice is fine, right? Fine. And then it just suddenly goes into cheesy and I have to be very careful. It's like a very fine line for me.
Very fine balance there.
Relatable and cheesy.
And so what is a favorite trope of yours to read?
I like enemies to lovers. That's always a good one. And I like fish out of water. Like, I like anything where someone is finding their way. But I think the trope that I keep writing myself is, and I don't know if it's a trope, but the idea that you can't judge someone by the outside, right? Mm-hmm. That you can't judge a book by its cover. That I think is a theme that I want to write, that I write about all over and over and over again, because I think it's really important, right?
Good. Oh, I was gonna say, was that like a like sort of a conscious decision that you made writing your books, or was it something that you kind of naturally just discovered that you wanted to give the, a fish out of water experience?
I don't know, because I don't know how much planning goes into what I do. Honestly, I don't know. I think I'm planning, right? I think I've got it totally going on and I know exactly what I'm going to do. And then I sit down and that's not what comes out. So it's not, I wish it was as controlled and thoughtful as the question makes it sound. It's really not. It's really just kind of a rolling cluster.
Well, that brings me to my next question, which is, are you a pantser or a plotter?
I'm a pantser, but it's really annoying to everybody who has to work with me. So I'm supposed to be trying to become more of a plotter.
Do you write linearly though? Do you write in order, or do you? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I write linearly. I'm often surprised. I pivot, which my agent hates. So I'll like be writing and I'll be a third of the way through the book and I'm like, yeah, this is not working at all. I've started a whole new book. Which I've done a few times and which she's very patient about, but which ultimately is not a good way of, this is not a very sustainable model for anybody, because it means I end up writing a lot really fast. Mm-hmm. Not really great. It's not really great. I'm pulling it off, but I feel like I could be doing so much better. The work could be so much better if I was giving myself a little bit more time to reflect and go back. So it's a constant work in progress.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you're just still at the beginning, so there's a little bit of learning every single time.
Exactly.
Okay, so what is the best writing fuel for you?
Coffee.
Black
tea.
Or tea? Okay.
Tea, I would say actually, but it changes, but lately, maybe because I'm getting older, I can't drink as much coffee first thing in the morning as I used to. So I have to drink tea first thing in the morning. So I'll have like 3 cups of tea and then I'll switch to coffee.
I like that.
And then chocolate milkshake.
Yum. That's what I'd be looking forward to.
Yeah.
Love a chocolate milkshake. Okay. One new thing that you have done during the shelter-in-place orders.
Well, I've been definitely smoking more pot.
LA for the win.
It is California and I don't have anywhere to go. So
it's true. It's safe decisions.
I'm just being honest with you. That's the one thing that's really changed.
I appreciate your honesty and it endears me to you so much.
I beg your pardon?
I was like, I appreciated your honesty so much.
Yeah. So that's what I've been doing.
Let's see. A book that you always recommend to a new reader.
This is you're going to have to be specific. A new reader who's never read the written word before, or a new, like fresh to English. So
I guess the way I think of it is like, we always find those readers that kind of discover that they're later in life readers. Like there's like a thing that would spark them and then opens the door to like a whole new genre. Right. So I guess sort of that would be the parameters of the question.
That's a very difficult question. The book that I recommend most commonly in the last decade is Let's Pretend This Never Happened by the bloggess, Jenny Lawson.
Yeah, that's a great book.
Because it's a great book and because I haven't actually ever met anyone who didn't find it funny. I mean, there are lots of, in general, I love books that are really funny. So I'm always going to recommend something funny rather than something deeply touching, because life is touching enough. And so I would recommend that one, because it's just, I don't know, I had to stop reading that book because I was reading it while my kids were little and I kept laughing so hard that I would wake them up. And so I had to stop it. I've never laughed so hard at a book. I had to put it down. Yeah. And there's a lot of funny books in the world, but there's just some scenes in that one that are so out of control funny that I'm
always blown away. I still think of Beyonce the chicken.
Yeah.
All the time.
And her dad throwing the stuffed animal, like the taxidermied animal at her boyfriend. Yeah, no, I mean, it's just a lot in it that's good. And then also in the same vein, Hyperbole and a Half. Also another Ali Broche, another really, really funny, weird, quirky book. Because to me, those are the books that actually change the way you think about books, right? If you suddenly this is more of a book where you're like, wow, this is a really weird person who's writing a totally weird point of view and it's really funny and I've never thought about a goose that way or whatever. And it changes the way that you think about the world. So those are the kind of books that I think are worth recommending to someone new. And then I'm a golden age crime person, so I would always recommend all of those books because they're great.
Absolutely. All right, so our last one, actually, I'm curious to know, what was the best road trip you ever took?
I took a really good road trip with my husband before we were married, where we traveled across Canada, going from national park to national park, and we saw bear, and we saw moose, and we saw Canadian television, and other wild things like that. And then on the last day, someone stole our video camera out of our car in the airport parking lot. Like literally, we like parked the car, got our stuff out, took it through, and then it was in Vancouver, and we went to, there's like a place under a bridge there that has like really cute stores and stuff. So we like left all the luggage, left the car, we had a layover for like 5 hours or something. Came back, someone had broken into the car and taken it. It was so annoying. Like all the film, all the photographs, the video, everything.
So that the
great
pictures of the bears were gone.
See, I'm like, we got it through the bears. We got the camera past the moose, and then someone from Vancouver. Too wild for us.
Yeah, too wild for you.
Too wild.
That is very upsetting. I'm very upset for you now.
When the lady was talking about, everyone was talking about driving with their mother, I did remember that when my granddad very quickly had a stroke when we were little. And so we had to drive up and down. There was like a month or 6 weeks where he was in the hospital, and we lived about 2.5 hours away from him, from where my grandparents lived. And so I was maybe 7 and my sister was 5. And we had 2 new kittens. And my mother was a single mother, right? Because my father was gone at this point. Mm-hmm. So she would pack us in the back of the car, and she would fold all the seats flat. This is in the 70s. Cover it with blankets, put a litter tray in the back on the flat, put the 2 kittens and us, no seatbelts, no nothing, right? Just loose in the back with the seat folded down, and then we just drive. She'd pick us up from school like that, and we'd drive up through the evening to get there in time to put us to bed. Mm-hmm. And then when we got there, we would sleep in 2 armchairs pushed together. That was the best thing about it. They didn't have a big house, but they pushed 2 armchairs together, and that would make a little bed for us.
Yep. Yeah. That's so cool. Awesome.
Yeah. For my mother, that was probably a really challenging, difficult, emotional time, right? For me, it was one of the best memories of my childhood is like driving around with kittens loose in the back of the car. Yeah. You never know how your kids are gonna take the stuff that seems difficult to you. You might find it great. You never know.
That's true. Well, Abbi, thank you so much for joining us for this recorded portion of our interview. If you don't mind staying for a few more minutes to take some off-record questions and follow-ups, that'd be really awesome.
Of course.
And then before I let you go, how can readers stay in touch with you and find out more about you?
So I have a website, abbiwaxman.com, and you can certainly go there to check out stuff. And then I'm on Instagram, Abbi Waxman, all one word, I think. And that's really all I do, social media, because Twitter makes me angry. And I'm not allowed on TikTok or whatever it is, because I'm not allowed to go on it, apparently. Mm-hmm. I've been told it's not for me. Which is fine with me. I'm like, oh, really?
If you get that, as you get your secret TikTok account just to annoy your kids.
I don't want to know. I don't want to know what they're doing.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Abbi. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording portion. But guys, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat section, or go ahead and turn your microphones on and get ready